Now we're moving on to our next session. Um, it's something that I think a lot of us may hide from during Ramadan, exercise. But I think it's we're going to learn now that we actually don't have to run away from exercise. So we've got our next speaker, Brother Mohammed, who is an accredited exercise physiologist. He's based in Melbourne with several years of experience working in major metropolitan public hospitals and local community health centres. His passion lies in chronic disease management and supporting people from culturally and linguistically diverse communities and other disadvantaged groups through accessible evidence-based exercise care. He will try to answer, is it dangerous to exercise during Ramadan? I'm hoping he's going to say yes. No, no, I'm joking. Inshallah. Over to you, brother.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Noor. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Inshallah, it's going to be a night of barakah, and you will take something away to implement this Ramadan, inshallah. As the doctor mentioned, my name is Mohamed. I'm an accredited exercise physiologist, and essentially my role is to help people to use movement as a form of medicine to support their health, energy, and daily function. And inshallah, tonight I'd like to share how movement can help to support both our health and also our worship during this upcoming Ramadan. There's a common sort of theme we often experience in Ramadan where people tend to be or become inactive. And it's for a number of reasons, but I kind of hear the same thing from patients and members of our communities, mainly with the sort of notion that I'll begin exercising after Ramadan, and once Eid has concluded, but right now I need to rest. But I also hear another story as well, that people feel more tired, their joints feel more stiff, their mood drops, and by the end of Ramadan, they end up feeling weaker than when they first started. So I began asking a different question. What if Ramadan wasn't a month of stopping and becoming inactive, but a month of changing how we actually move? So the key aspect when it comes to introducing or continuing with physical activity and or exercise in Ramadan is to do it wisely, because we want to ensure that we want to ensure that it's one of the ways that we can honor the body that we've been entrusted with, inshallah. Firstly, to understand why movement still matters in Ramadan, we first need to understand what fasting does to the body. So with energy and the consumption of food at different times, the body gradually switches from using food we've just eaten to using stored energy. It's a normal and healthy adaptation that we go through, but it can also make people feel a bit more sluggish or a bit more tired at first. Hydration is an obvious one. Because we're not drinking throughout the day, hydration becomes more fragile. So this is why timing and intensity of movement matters more so in Ramadan than at any other time throughout the year. Sleep and routine disruptions, late night for prayers, early mornings for suhoor, change our sleep patterns. Less or broken sleep can affect our mood, concentration, and also physical performance when we engage in activity. With our mood and our focus throughout the day, that can shift. So some people will notice they feel more irritable or this mental fog, especially in the first week of Ramadan, and then it gradually gets better. And that's probably due to a change in the way the blood sugar is absorbed in the bloodstream throughout the timing of the day, and also the disruption of sleep as well. So these changes are a part of the body's adjustment, but hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'd be able to get some confidence that movement can actually help the body adapt more smoothly rather than make things hard. Now, before we talk about solutions, we need to be honest about what Ramadan feels like for many people. including myself. Fatigue is a huge one. So, um, we understand that fasting changes your sleep, your timing of your meals, how you feel throughout the day. And many people genuinely feel more tired during the day. So movement becomes the first thing to drop. Um, you know, the fatigue is another one. I mean, change of routine. So work schedules, family commitments, prayer routines all shift at Ramadan. What used to be regular exercise time no longer fits easily during the day. This fear of dehydration or injury. So there's a common fear that any exercise or physical activity can actually lead to dehydration during Ramadan. But so essentially, some people choose to avoid movement altogether. We all come from many cultures, and unfortunately, between each culture, a very common aspect that we see is that they become associated with rest and stillness and inactivity. So we often inherit these habits without even questioning them or without even realizing them as well. It's a community sort of habit that we have tend to adapt it to. And as I mentioned earlier, this notion that it's a month of rest, I'll restart after Eid, not realizing that actually several weeks of inactivity can actually lead to greater stiffness, greater loss in strength, and a progressively lower mood. So these reasons are completely understandable, but they also they also open the door to a better question, which is, what if the goal isn't to stop completely, but to move differently during Ramadan? Physical activity help or harm during Ramadan? Does it help or harm? So we understand, like I mentioned in a previous slide, the body changes when we fast. Um, and there are some considerations when you have to introduce exercise when you're fasting. When we introduce gentle to moderate movement, it can help the body to control blood sugar throughout the day, and it can also improve metabolic health markers as well. A key one also is when we maintain resistance training, we can also help to protect the muscles and strength from deconditioning and a decline. And people who often stay active throughout the month of Ramadan generally report better mood and also less fatigue, which hopefully will translate to a more productive Ramadan in Ibadah. Let's test some common beliefs we've all grown up with. And unfortunately, some myths are pretty rampant in our community. Exercise will make me weak. Um, in contrast, like I mentioned earlier, not moving actually can lead to greater stiffness and greater loss of strength, especially if it's several weeks of inactivity. Another one is I'll become dehydrated. Now, while this myth can become a reality at times, timing and intensity matter more so rather than stopping completely with your activity and exercise. And another myth which people tend to adapt is it's for rest only, it's for stillness, it's for inactivity. But Ramadan is about balance. We have to rest, we have to worship, but also care for the body. It's all together. When we replace fear with movement and fear with balance, it can become part of our Ramadan rather than something we avoid. So, some considerations regarding physical activity and exercise. Now, these are taken from the Exercise and Sport Science Australia physical activity guidelines. Physical activity and exercise are different. So, physical activity is essentially any bodily movement that uses energy, and some examples might be housework or gardening, walking to the mosque, for example. Exercise, on the other hand, is a type of physical activity, but it's planned and it's structured. So think of going to a gym or going for a run. In Ramadan, we often focus more on physical activity rather than formal exercise because it's easier to fit in to daily life and worship. However, structured exercise can actually also be adequately scheduled in, especially when it's planned well in advance. So, how often do we need to complete physical activity in accordance with these guidelines? The encouragement is to do it on most, if not all, days of the week. At least 150 minutes to 300 minutes of moderate, intense physical activity should be achieved. And that's usually about 20 to 30 minutes a day. And another key one is muscle strengthening activities on at least 2 times per week. Intensity is also really key, especially during Ramadan. Now, light to moderate levels are preferred. We want to try and avoid strenuous activity, especially if it's not previously undertaken. And there are some examples listed below, like brisk walking or light strength or running. And there are some other non-structured physical activities which are also beneficial and contribute to these guidelines, such as gardening, vacuuming, or laundry work. A key question I get often asked is, when's the best time to move and incorporate exercise during Ramadan? So I've put down 4 key times throughout the day: before Fajr throughout the day, before Iftar, and 1 to 2 hours after Iftar or thereabouts. So the first one, before Fajr, I've listed the type of intensity that we should be aiming to achieve. And that's because we have the opportunity to consume food and fluid before, and then hopefully, at the time of suhoor, you can refuel as well. Then we progress to throughout the day. Uh, Generally speaking, we aren't able to eat or drink throughout the day. Hence, why gentle lower intensity is recommended, because we don't have those times for refueling the body. And closer towards iftar, before iftar, we should look towards, if you were incorporating exercise, a lower to moderate intensity type of exercise can be achieved, but it has to be close enough so that you can refuel after your session in the sort of minutes in the lead up to your exercise session. And then a couple of hours after iftar, hopefully that will allow the food that you just consumed to be absorbed in the body. And that's when you can engage in some structured exercise as well of a moderate intensity. And you also have the opportunity to refuel after as well before the next day commences. Another key aspect and consideration with this year's Ramadan is it's going to occur in summer. And that often it's going to coincide with long hot days, which will increase the risk of dehydration and heat stress. So for this reason, it's best to avoid that intense activity during the hottest part of the day while fasting. So the key message here is choose cooler times. So before Fajr or after Iftar, keep it to low to moderate if you can, and be aware of your symptoms. If you feel dizzy, weak, or overheated, we should cease activity. So the objective here is movement should actually support your health and your productivity throughout the day when you're fasting. It shouldn't put you at risk. There are some special groups that need special care when it comes to engaging them with exercise. So I've listed 3 here, but there are many other special groups. While sort of movement is beneficial for most people in Ramadan, and it's definitely can be beneficial for these groups, they do need some extra care. So for all the adults, Ramadan can increase the risk of stiffness, falls, and muscle loss if they stop movement completely. And we know as you get older, things tend to decline, and your risk of falls increase, your risk of sarcopenia increases, and osteoporosis. So we want to still encourage walking, some light strengthening activities, some light gardening if they can do it. The goal for all the adults isn't about the intensity, It's about maintaining independence, joint health, and confidence in movement. For chronic disease or people living with chronic diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, physical activity remains especially important, but the approach must be thoughtful during fasting. As the sister mentioned in her previous presentation, for diabetes, the main concerns during fasting are hypoglycemia, so low blood sugar levels, dehydration, and also you may need to change the timing of your medications, or if you're on insulin, the dose of your insulin as well. You will need to consult with your GP or your pharmacist or even your diabetes educator to manage that accordingly. For children and adolescents that are opting to fast, we understand that they're in a phase of rapid growth and development, so their energy and hydration needs are different from adults. It's just a note here, just to be mindful, if you are a parent or a caregiver, just watch closely for signs of fatigue, dizziness, or irritability, and allow flexibility if the child needs to stop fasting or rest. It's also really important to communicate with if your kids are playing sport or they engage in physical education classes at school, to make the teachers aware of their needs and to adjust accordingly. Another note with children and adolescents, sometimes from my experience growing up, we can tend to skip suhoor, and we know that shouldn't occur, especially with a developing body. So try and encourage a well nourished suhoor that'll keep them energized throughout the day, and it should include enough fluids to support their energy. This section here, I always try to remind myself that being active and engaging in exercise isn't just a dunya aspect of our life that we live. It's also seen as support for our worship. So this Ramadan, I'd like to reframe how physical activity can actually support our ibadah. I've listed a few dot points there with some examples of how exercise can help with our ibadah. For example, your posture and your prayer, the stiffness you experience when you go down for sujood, the energy that you might have for tarawih will be improved, and your sharpness and your focus and your khushu and your salah can actually improve as well when you engage in regular physical activity. One of the examples that I often encourage my patients and also my community members is even simple movements like walking to the mosque, which we know is already an act of worship. The Prophet ﷺ, he taught us that for every step that we take to the mosque, a reward is written and a sin is wiped away. So something as ordinary as walking can become both physically beneficial for us, and also it can also become a spiritual investment as well. My final message, as we've seen tonight, Ramadan is not just a test of hunger and thirst. It's a test of how well we care for what we've been entrusted with. Our bodies change during fasting, our routines shift, fatigue is real, but the solution is not to stop moving, it's to move wisely. Movement in Ramadan is not about chasing your fitness goals or burning calories, even though they can be important goals for some people. It's about preserving strength, protecting your energy, and supporting our ability to worship with presence and focus. For health professionals listening, it's an opportunity to offer guidance that is both evidence-based and culturally sensitive. And for our community, you have the permission to move without guilt and fear. A short walk, some gentle stretching, some light strength exercises, these small acts of care can actually add up to big rewards. Ramadan teaches us discipline, balance, and intention. Let movement be part of that intention, because when we care for the body, we create space for the heart and mind to flourish as well, inshallah. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khair, Brother Mohammed, for such a beautiful and inspiring presentation, I have to say. And just to quote you, Ramadan is about balance and it's about moving differently. And I think I never thought about it in that way. And it's really, truly motivating, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair.
I'm going to throw two questions at you. You've got a few, but we might address them later. One of them is I have a daily lap swimming routine. This is from one of our participants. Can I continue this during Ramadan and during fasting time? Would 500 meters be too much?
So to the first question, swimming it can be continued in Ramadan. As I mentioned, the timing is really important as well to help with the refueling component. The second part of that question, sister, can you repeat that?
Yep. So can I continue this during Ramadan and during fasting time? And would 500 meters be too much?
So if you are doing it during the day, you probably want to stick to more of that lower intensity swim. So 500 meters is your usual swim, which is quite easy for you to do. You've done it for a long time. That might be okay, but um, if you're finding it quite a more moderate or higher intensity task, then you may have to adjust the distance that you're aiming to achieve. So maybe reduce it to 200 meters, and then just see how the body responds after that.
No problems, brother. And the second question is one of the participants saying that they normally do a weight class in the gym 3 times a week around 6 a.m. in the morning. Can I continue with this in Ramadan with no water, or should I stop the weight classes?
Ideally, if they can bring that, so I think a class meaning like a group class that's probably rigid in time. If that's the case, you may have to, you could probably continue with it, but you may have to modify the intensity of your exercise. So how much weight you're lifting, for example, or the amount of exercises you choose to do. But if you can adjust the timing, again, try and allocate a time where you can refuel after your strength training to help refuel that body as well.
Problems. Inshallah, we'll get to more questions after during the Q&A. So keep your questions coming in the Q&A chat box if that's okay.